A 6-year-old black girl, barefoot clutching an empty plastic bottle, stood in the freezing rain shivering, soaked, and smiling. She said softly, "Sir, could I have some milk please? I promise I'll pay when I grow up." Security reached for her, thinking she was some street prop. But the billionaire raised one hand. Wait, there was something off, something terrifyingly familiar in her eyes. Julian Price wasn't known for compassion. Wall Street called him the steel mind. If a deal didn't bring profit, he destroyed it and whoever was attached to it. He'd just dismantled a children's cancer charity for poor accounting when that knock interrupted him. Rain pelted the windows. His assistant stammered, "Sir, there's a little girl outside asking for milk." "Milk," Julian scoffed. "What am I, Walmart?" He turned to continue his tirade against his failing executive team, but something tugged at him. A memory. No, a voice. "Please, Mr. Ethos," lied, but it sliced through the chaos like a blade. He turned. There she was, a fragile little thing with torn socks, hair in uncombed coils, and eyes that refused to beg even though everything else about her screamed hunger. He stormed toward the door. "Who let her in here?" She didn't flinch. Instead, she held out a bottle. "My little brother's hungry. Mama says the stores don't trust us no more, but I promise I'll pay you back one day." Julian's jaw tightened. He hadn't heard a promise like that in years, not since he had whispered something similar to a bakery owner in Alabama only to be thrown out and called vermin. That memory had been locked away, along with the boy he used to be. Securities escort her out gently. The guard stepped forward, but then she added something quiet, bone-chilling. "My mama says you're the man who owns everything, even the people." Julian froze. His entire boardroom turned silent. The girl wasn't yelling. She wasn't crying. But her words struck like lightning. Something about the way she said it. Something in her face. And then he noticed it. The faint scar on her cheek. The exact same birthmark his little sister had, the one that vanished 25 years ago during a fire that killed their mother. Julian blinked. "What's your name?" She looked up, smiled. "Charity." Julian's hand dropped to his side as if the weight of that one word, Charity, snapped a wire deep inside him. He hadn't heard that name in 25 years. Charity was his baby sister, the child he'd carried through fire, the child who vanished in smoke while their mother burned trying to save them both, the child they buried in an empty coffin because nothing was ever found. He took a step forward, voice cracking. "What did you say your name was?" The girl blinked, confused. Charity Blake. Blake, his mother's surname. He dropped into his leather chair like gravity tripled. The boardroom was dead quiet now. His CFO, a wiry man named Darnell, glanced at the girl, then at Julian, then slowly backed out of the room knowing something far bigger than a quarterly loss had just entered the building. Julian reached into his drawer and pulled out an old rusted dog tag. It had one word etched on the back, barely visible anymore. Charity. He hadn't touched it in a decade. "You said your mama sent you." The girl nodded. "She works at a laundry on 145th Street. She said not to come here, but my baby brother ... who? He got sick. Mama says you got your face on the milk truck, so I figured ... maybe you're the boss." Julian stood. "Take me to her." The guards blinked. "Sir, I said get the car." The girl grinned, showing a missing front tooth. She held his hand like they'd known each other forever. As they walked through the lobby, employees froze. The coldest man in the city, the same man who once sued a nurse for serving him lukewarm coffee, was walking barefoot through the rain with a little girl. By the time they reached the Rolls-Royce, she had climbed into the back like she owned it. "You believe in God, Mr. Julian?" He hesitated. "I stopped a long time ago." She pointed at the clouds. "He didn't stop you." The car ride to 145th Street was silent, but inside Julian's mind, thunder, memory, regret. That name echoed louder than any courtroom victory ever had. When they pulled up to a crumbling building beside a bodega, the girl said, "We're home." Julian stepped out, and that's when he saw her. The woman in the doorway dropped the laundry bag and gasped. Her eyes widened, hands shook, lips trembled. Julian froze. "Marissa," she nodded slowly. It was his childhood neighbor, the girl who'd lived across the street, the one who tried to drag him out of the fire after he fell unconscious, the one who disappeared the day after the fire and took his baby sister with her. He took a breath. "Is she mine?" he whispered. Marissa's face turned pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but that's when a shot rang out. A silenced one. Julian turned just in time to see his driver slumped over the car, dead. The little girl screamed. From the alley, a figure in black stepped forward, gun raised, and calmly said, "You weren't supposed to find her." Julian didn't sleep that night. The rain hadn't stopped pounding the city, but something else echoed loud at her voice. "I promise I'll pay when I grow up. My mama says you own everything, even the people." He stared at the security footage, frozen on her face. That scar, that smile, that same mark behind her ear. It was impossible. His sister Nia had died in the fire that tore their trailer park apart. He was only 13. He'd tried to run back in, but flames swallowed the hallway. Her body was never found. They said she must have burned. But that little girl. He hit play again. She looked just like her. Julian stood and grabbed his coat. Get me the address of the girl. And her mother now. The next morning he found himself parked in front of a broken-down duplex in South Bronx. Peeling paint, shattered mailbox, a rusted grocery cart full of empty cans sat on the lawn. He knocked, no answer. He knocked again. This time the door creaked, opened by half an inch. And there she was, Charity, holding a half-eaten apple. Her eyes widened. You came. Julian knelt down. Where's your mother, sweetheart? She pointed. A woman coughed violently in the background. Weak, rasping. Julian entered. The woman lying on the couch looked 50, maybe older, but under the sickness, the fatigue, the sunken eyes, his heart stopped. He whispered, Nia. Her eyes flickered open, groggy, then widened in fear. You. She reached for a bottle of pills. You're real. Julian fell to his knees, his voice cracked. How they said you died. She coughed again, but managed a half smile. I did. To the world anyway. I searched for you. I tried. No, you buried me with your ambition. Julian flinched. Charity stood between them now, confused. Mummy, who is he? Nia whispered. That's your uncle. The silence shattered Julian's world. And just then, before he could speak, 3 black SUVs screeched to a halt outside. Windows rolled down. A red laser dot appeared on Julian's chest. Someone shouted, That girl doesn't belong to you anymore. Julian stared at the old security footage like it was a ghost come alive. There she was, Charity, but not just at the door. She'd been near his building twice before, once last winter, once during the heat wave, always with a bottle, always with that same smile. Why didn't anyone tell him? His tech director stammered. We flagged her once, sir. Thought she was part of a scam ring. We deleted the report. Julian's throat went dry. Get it back. He barely heard himself. His eyes were glued to the screen where Charity sat on a sidewalk, helping a boy eat crackers, not selling anything, not begging, just waiting, as if she knew she'd come face to face with someone who owed her something. But Julian didn't owe anyone, not anymore at least. That's what he'd convinced himself. Suddenly, a voice interrupted him. She's in the lobby again, whispered his assistant alone. He raced down against every instinct. His pride screamed, and there she was, sitting cross-legged on the cold tile, holding out the same empty bottle. But this time she spoke before he could. I don't want money, sir. I just want the milk. Julian crouched. His voice cracked. Who told you to come here? No one. Mama says I have to do things myself, like you did. Like you did. That phrase, word for word what his mother had told him before the house caught fire. He reached out slowly. Your mother. What's her name? Charity blinked. She said you wouldn't remember her. Said you'd buried her long ago with your other mistakes. His pulse pounded. What other mistakes? Charity handed him a folded piece of paper. It was a faded photograph of his mother, holding 2 children. Him and a baby sister. Charity looked up. She said you'd come find us one day, but we got tired of waiting, so I found you first. Julian's knees gave out, and for the first time in 20 years, he cried. Julian's knuckles tightened around the edge of the mahogany table. Charity sat on the leather couch in his private lounge, sipping warm milk with trembling hands. A fire crackled nearby, but she still shook either from the cold or the storm she'd just ignited in his chest. He knelt slowly, eye level with her. Charity, who's your mother? She hesitated. Mama says not to tell rich men too much. Julian's throat dried. His mind had been unraveling all night. Old newspaper clippings, forgotten adoption files, a name scrawled on a hospital wristband. Danielle Price, his sister, vanished in the fire. No remains ever found. Was your mama's name Danielle? Charity blinked. Then she looked away, lips trembling. She said, if a man with sad eyes ever asked that, I should say no. Julian backed away as if struck. He turned to his desk, ripped open a locked drawer, and pulled out a photo burnt at the edges, long hidden beneath glass. He handed it to her. Do you know her? Charity stared at it. Her bottom lip quivered. She told me not to show anyone. Then she pulled a locket from under her shirt and opened it. Inside, the same woman. Same eyes, same scar. His sister. Julian dropped to his knees. My God. But Charity stepped back. You're not supposed to know who I am. Julian's breath caught. Why? She looked toward the door. Because they're watching, and if they find out, we're both gone. Just then, the lights cut out. Outside, a black SUV rolled to a stop. She whispered, they're here. Julian sat across from Charity in the penthouse kitchen, untouched milk warming between them. The skyline glittered behind her like a different world, but she looked right through it. I'll pay you back, she said again, even if it takes forever. Julian's voice cracked. Why do you keep saying that? Charity looked down at her hands. Because Mama said never take nothing for free, not from people like you. Julian flinched. People like me. Charity's eyes met his. Rich men who smile without their eyes. Mama says they always want something back. Julian leaned back, stunned. Who taught her to speak like this? This wasn't just a hungry child. She was trying to protect someone, or something. Where's your mother now? He asked. Eyes shifted. Gone. Hiding. Hiding from who? She leaned in and whispered, men who drive the same cars as yours. Julian's stomach dropped. His face paled. because those weren't just any black SUVs his company used, they were custom-made, armored. Only executives of Helix Corp used them. Helix Corp, the same private security firm Julian secretly owned off-book, the one he used for dirty work that couldn't trace back to him suddenly. The girl's appearance wasn't coincidence. It was a message, and as Julian's phone buzzed with a restricted number, he realized something terrifying. This wasn't about milk anymore. It was a war someone started 25 years ago, and now the forgotten girl had come to collect Dot with interest. Julian stood in the ruins of what used to be his legacy. The 86-story glass tower that bore his name was now nothing more than a scorched steel skeleton. Sirens echoed in the distance. Smoke still curled into the night sky. The fire hadn't just devoured his empire, it had taken every last record, every bank, server, every power-hungry executive that once sat beside him. What remained was him and Charity. The little girl he'd once brushed off as a beggar was now the only family he had left. The fire hadn't been an accident. It was arson triggered by a detonator hidden behind a false wall in his executive suite, and the security footage revealed something chilling. It wasn't meant to kill him. It was meant to erase every trace of her. Charity, they had found out. The board about her true identity, his sister's child, his niece, the rightful heir to 48% of the company's stock. They'd feared what he might do if he felt again. If he remembered the boy who had once begged for bread in Alabama. And they were right, because he did. He remembered the sister who died screaming in that orphanage fire while he escaped, thinking she hadn't made it. But she had, barely, and somehow, she'd survived long enough to give birth to this fearless little girl with fire in her eyes and a voice that echoed through steel. Julian signed the last document with trembling hands. Charity sat beside him, on the burnt steps, clutching a warm cup of milk. He handed her the pen. "What's this?" she asked, eyes wide. "My will." Her mouth dropped open. "I don't want your money. You already paid," he whispered, smiling. She blinked, confused. He leaned in, brushing ash off her cheek. "You gave me something no one else could, a second chance." The news broke 2 days later. Greater than Julian Price, ruthless billionaire, dissolves entire empire, donates $7 billion to rebuild forgotten neighborhoods, hospitals and schools in his hometown. But the final twist stunned the world even more. Greater than a mysterious 6-year-old black girl named Charity inherits controlling shares of Price Corp and appoints herself milk manager of the people. Her first company-wide memo: "Every kid who asks for milk gets it, no questions. They'll pay us back when they grow up, just like I will." And as for Julian, he never rebuilt. He disappeared quietly into the streets of Alabama, volunteering at shelters, planting trees, telling bedtime stories to orphans who had no one else, because in the end, the man who once owned everything finally learned what it meant to give.